Welcome to the Better Birth podcast. I am super excited to have the very amazing Charlotte the Smart Doula on today to talk about research, which is a passion of mine and also a passion of Charlotte's, and Charlotte's birth experiences. Welcome, Charlotte.
I'm so excited to be here. I think one of your podcasts was one of the ones that made me realise that I needed to engage my research brain when planning my second baby.
Oh, I'm glad that it had a positive influence on your experience. Do you want to talk a little bit about just who you are and what you do before we kick off?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Charlotte. I'm a smart doula. I work predominantly virtually at the moment because I've got two quite young children and I can't attend births in person with childcare. But what I do is I have virtual packages where I can support people all the way through pregnancy. I can go on call for them, support them with immediate access to me during birth. And I also do postpartum packages as well. And for anyone that's in Leeds, I do in-person stuff, but just not attending the birth because I do love that personal connection when I can get it.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, isn't it? I think since COVID, we've realised that actually we can do a lot of virtual support, which I think was one of the few positives that came out of being in lockdown. And I'm similarly, most of my clients are virtual, although I do in person as well. But I think it's fantastic that we can reach more people and support more
Yeah.
people. So
It's more accessible for a lot of people, especially second-time parents who just cannot find the time to fit in-person antenatal prep above the midwife visits, consultants visits. 'Cause it's getting intense now, isn't it, with all the visits people need to do
yeah,
or are asked to do. So it's nice that we can just fit in. And for me as well, being a mum of two, it's nice that I can just fit this in.
yeah. So we're going to talk about research, which is, like I said, something that I'm very passionate about, and I guess I'm known online as somebody who loves to analyze a research study, and I know you do as well. So what made you realize that doing some research when you're pregnant was so important?
So it's interesting because after uni, I did a biomedical science degree, and after uni, I started working in clinical research. And I've worked everywhere in clinical research. I've worked in the NHS in oncology. I've worked in pharma companies, and now work in a smaller company. And at no point in my first pregnancy did I think I should look into the research regarding all of these things that are happening to me. Just didn't cross my mind. I did NCT, I did an online hypnobirthing course, and I felt really prepared. I felt like I knew everything that I possibly could. Um, and I made some like decisions that I thought were based on research. Like I went past 40 weeks. I was quite happy to do that. And I did look into those things and I accepted those risks. So I did do a little bit in my first pregnancy. But really, when I actually went into labour, I just presumed, and I think this maybe is a hangover from working in my role in oncology research and like first in man drug studies, which obviously are very like regulated, that all the things that were suggested to me during that labour and birth were evidence based, and therefore I should do them. Because in my world, we don't use something doesn't go on the market unless it's had loads of evidence behind it that it's safe, that it's effective, that. So I just thought let's do all these things that are suggested. So an example of that is my waters broke and I waited 24 hours and I wasn't in active labour by that point. So I was in hospital and there was this literally like the clock struck 24 hours and somebody walked in with a CTG machine and said, "We need to get you on this CTG machine now because it's been over 24 hours and you're not in active labour." And I was just like, okay, put it on me. And actually, thankfully, my mum saved me from that one because she actually said she was my second birth partner. She actually said, "How does anybody know she's not in active labour? No one's been here looking at her and no one's checked." So actually, at that point, I was checked and I was in active labour. So that was a brilliant bit of advocacy from my mum. Um, And so I managed to get myself into the birth centre, which again, I thought I'd done lots of evidence-based research and the birth centre was the best place for me, but I hadn't looked into home birth at all because I had that mental block. And I laboured a bit in the birth centre and it was great. And then my waters broke and there was meconium in my waters. And it was, now you have to go to the labour ward, now you have to be on CTG. And again, 100% just went with it. Didn't even know it was a choice. Didn't know there was a choice there for me. It was just, you have to do this. And then it was, okay, so the CTG monitor is a bit fiddly. Maybe we should put this clip on the baby's head that's actually probably more, it's easier for you to move around. And I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. So that happened. They found out I was 10 centimetres and then it was coach pushing, you need to push now because you're 10 centimetres. And that's what I'd learned in NCT. Get to 10 centimetres and you push. So it was just this cascade. And at no point did I have the knowledge or even the idea that I could make a decision at any of those points. It wasn't presented to me as a decision point. And that was what left me with the trauma from my first birth. Because on paper, it didn't look too bad, actually. I ended up giving birth vaginally with no assistance. I only had gas and air. So really, like, okay, that was a pretty good birth. But I just felt like totally out of control. I didn't know why any of those things had happened to me. And I felt like everything had gone wrong. And to be honest, I didn't want another baby after that. And my husband didn't want another one because he was like, well, we can't go through that again. So that was like a really massive part of this, because after a while, after 2 years, when we decided we do actually want another child, I just switched my brain on. I switched my research brain on. And I found all of this stuff. So I found the evidence about CTGs. I found the evidence about meconium in your waters and how it's, it's normal after, it's when you're overdue, it's quite common, and that not every type of meconium is an emergency, and, and that there's no evidence base for CTG use in meconium. I found all of this and my mind was just blown wide open. And I found evidence-based podcasts and went into the evidence and blogs and all of that. And it just amazed me. And it really did prepare me. And that's my second birth. We used all of that. And it was the most empowering thing that's ever happened to me. And my husband, we were just like, whoa, that's how different it can be if we make the choices that we need to make. So that's why afterwards, my son was only a year, and I was like, I need to be telling people about this. I can't just go back to my normal life. So yeah, that was where I found research in maternity and how important it can be.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's feeling empowered and feeling in control, and that loss of control, I think, contributes to a lot of birth trauma for a lot of people. And it's sad that anybody that's pregnant should have to do all that research, because you're right. There's similarly, if you were ill and you had cancer, or and you were putting your faith in your doctor, I think we would generally have trust that they know the latest evidence and the treatments and so on, because it's so heavily researched, isn't it? We do have that, that faith that what they're recommending is evidence-based. But unfortunately, when it comes to maternity care or anything to do with women's health, to be honest,
absolutely,
it's a lot of the time it's either outdated research. I mean, I know I bang on about this is based on a study from the 1940s, and I feel like I'm saying it all the time, but genuinely some of the things they do is based on research from like 80 years ago, which is mental. Or it's not based on evidence at all. Sometimes it's just anecdotal,
cultural, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Or that obstetrician's preference, so I think a pregnant person does have to do a certain level of research. hopefully with somebody who knows and understands that research, because that's really daunting, right?
It's
I mean,
so overwhelming,
yeah,
so overwhelming. And one of the things that I do for my clients is, because I literally had this hyper focus on maternity research for a year before I got pregnant, then my whole pregnancy, and then continued after that. Every time I find a decent source of evidence or a podcast, and I think that's really important, I have this massive list so people can just be like, okay, I want to learn about meconium in waters. This is where I go to, because it's really difficult to find. And if you don't understand research to a certain level, you can Google, is meconium dangerous? And it comes up, yes, definitely dangerous. And you're like, okay. Like, and you can't, it's really difficult for people to actually find the research that is unbiased and, that is going to be put into practice, rather than just, the smaller studies that are sometimes very biased.
this is the thing. I mean, there's studies. I mean, you're right. You could Google a term, and God knows what would come up. And even if
Mm.
you do, find the latest research. I mean, I'm going to be doing a podcast episode on the big baby trial.
Oh,
Um, so I'm not going to go into depth
yeah,
on this trial in this episode, because I am going to be speaking to somebody about it. But it's safe to say that is an entire mess. That
yeah.
whole study, it is biased. They stopped the trial early, basically because it wasn't showing what they wanted it to show. Their control group and the research group, there was induction involved in both groups. I mean, it's such a mess. And just, I read research studies all the time, and I was trying to read this study and going,
It's
oh my God, like,
honestly,
it's the most complicated, convoluted mess of a study.
it is.
Uh,
It is.
and it's
And I write
that.
these papers,
Yeah.
and I write these protocols, and I'm like, I could never get this through ethics. How did this get through? Like, all these people, like, even the paper itself's got so many typos. It's like, and I'm just like, how's this happened?
Yeah.
And then the outcome of it is, there's a significant difference. But so that's what you'll get when you Google it.
Yeah.
There's a significant
There's caveats
difference.
around that, though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And again, an obstetrician potentially, or a midwife. In fact, I've already had someone in my DMs, a student midwife, messaged me and said, "Oh, but my one of the midwives at my hospital said that they stopped the trial early because the results were so great." And I literally just screenshot 2 paragraphs out of the study and sent it to her and was like, "No, they didn't." And some of this stuff is so open to interpretation.
Mm.
Even the healthcare professionals, either misinterpret or cherry pick information
Yes,
to
cherry pick,
reinforce
yeah.
what they want, the narrative that they want to, they want you to listen to. So I think having someone like yourself or myself that can look at that research, can unpick the
Mm.
key takeaways, find the most, not always the most recent, because like I said, that big
Yeah.
baby trial is not really reliable, but the most reliable study or information, so that you're making informed decisions, I think is really important. And that's hard, I think, for a pregnant person to do on their own.
It is really hard when you talk about the reason stuff, but we know, don't we, that it takes 20 years at least for evidence to become practice, and that's only if the evidence backs up the culture of the hospital. If research has found that something doesn't work, it can be never implemented, like routine cervical exams. Like, everyone knows that they're not evidence-based,
Mm.
but they're never going to disappear.
Yeah.
So
Or like, delayed cord clamping or optional cord clamping, um, that's heavily evidence based. The research is over a decade old, and still people are asking for optimal cord clamping in C-sections and being told that it's not possible, or there's no benefit of waiting longer than 60 seconds, when we know that there is a wealth of evidence showing that that's not the case, and actually there's huge long-term benefits. So the evidence is not always followed, is it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And, it was, and for me, in my second birth, it was as simple as understanding. So, in my first birth, at one point, my heart rate hit the roof. And they were like, you're dehydrated, so we're going to put you on an IV. And then it was, your bladder's too full now, so we're going to put a catheter in. And then I had a retained placenta because I didn't drain my bladder enough. So second time round, I was like, I know for me, my heart rate skyrockets when I'm in any sort of discomfort.
Mm.
I am not dehydrated. And one of my husband's jobs was to make sure that I was drinking and weeing and to make a big fuss of it to the midwives. Look how much she's drunk, look how much she's weeing. She is not dehydrated. So when they came and said, you need some fluids because your heart rate's high, we were like, no, we don't want that. Why don't you want that? Because this is our informed choice.
Mm.
Okay. And eventually, we had to say it multiple times, but eventually, when there's a handover of the midwives, we heard them talking outside, and they just said, she's refusing fluids, and you can ask her, but she'll say no. And they never asked me again.
Mm.
But I did not know I could do that first time round. And how I got through books, classes, multiple classes, and I didn't get that information that I could say no, I don't know. But it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Or the message wasn't strong enough.
And I think, we're talking about medical research and, researching, the pros and cons of medical interventions and your birth choices. Researching what your rights are is really important.
Definitely.
And when I teach my clients and I say, you do not have to have a vaginal exam, you do not have to have someone touch you unless you give consent. It sounds really obvious when you say it out loud, but for whatever reason, when we're pregnant, our perception is that our bodily autonomy goes out the window. And actually, we do need to research what our rights are when it comes to medical events, because I think a lot of our beliefs are incorrect about our rights and our bodily autonomy.
Yeah, 100%. And the strongest way you can go in on that is in the UK, you have the right to make any choice, even if it puts you or your baby in danger. That is our legal right. And no one's saying that we're encouraging people to go out and make choices that put them or their babies in danger. But once you understand that you have the legal right to do that, you understand that going to OB to get approval to do something is a tick box exercise. It's not needed. So it can really empower you to understand those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So where are your favorite places to find research? Because I have mine, and like you said, you have your list. I mean, you would laugh if you saw my bookmarks section on my browser, because I have folders for just about every single topic you can think of, and like multiple research files, links filed in each one. And when I teach and people do courses with my clients have access to like an online drive where I've saved loads of research and handouts and things. So I'll let you say where your favorite sources of information are, and then I'll see if they match up with mine. But I'm pretty sure that yours are going to be the same as mine.
So for me personally, if I'm thinking I need to think of look at a question, I'll go to a Cochrane review. But I understand they're sometimes a bit too high level for people. So if I want to find the studies for me to look at, that's where I'll go. One of the best things for clients that I find are podcasts. So I have your podcast and I have the Great Birth Rebellion podcast, and there's always an episode for those things. And one of the things that for my second birth that I'm like, oh, that's so annoying, I didn't know that, was about, I love your post about the active management of the placenta increases the hemorrhage risk if you've had a physiological birth.
Yeah.
No, I did not know that second time round, and I wouldn't have chosen it. But all the evidence that was getting from the doctors was it reduces your chance of a retained placenta. It reduces your chance of a bleed. So those podcast episodes came out after my second birth, and I was like, no. So this is why I'm like, you need to read these, listen to these podcasts. It's definitely podcasts. And then I love Sarah Wickham's blogs. I think they're absolutely amazing and really, really manageable for people to read. Same with Rachel Reed's blogs as well. And then there's the Midwife Cauldron podcast, which is amazing with Rachel Reed in. And they're not doing that anymore, are they? Which is sad times.
Yeah.
And then I do send people research papers. The Great Birth Rebellion is really good because they have, like you have, for each episode, they have all the papers that they reference in the episodes in a folder that you can access. But I just find evidence, like the actual papers, people, they just look at them like, I can't look at that.
Yeah.
So it's more like the meta-analysis and the blogs and stuff that really help people understand and do a summary of it.
Yeah. I think reading a research study can be really difficult. There's a lot of abbreviations, a lot of acronyms. Even the way they quantify risk or chances of something happening is really confusing, I think, because they love a per thousand statistic, which I think for the average person is quite difficult a concept to really get your head around. I think percentages are better, they're easier to understand. So you're right. I think Cochrane reviews are fantastic and they're generally very reliable. And I agree with all of those podcasts as well. Definitely. It drives me nuts that Instagram doesn't allow me to put things in folders because I get DMs all the time saying something. Oh, I saw a post a while ago on, third
Scroll back.
labor, and they're like, can you send it to me? And like I get that it's frustrating they can't find it. I have to do the same thing.
Yeah, the scroll.
I have to just scroll through it. So I just tell them to scroll through the profile because that's what I have to do. I don't know where it is. But my Instagram does have it's heavily research based. So if you find the time and can be bothered to scroll through my Instagram, there's quite a lot of information on research studies in there. The only one I would add to that, or only two I would add to that, is the AIMS.
Oh yeah, no, definitely AIMS. Yeah,
really good journal articles in there. That's a good source of information, and also evidence-based birth website is really good. I'm gonna have a caveat with this one though, because the post that they put out about water birth, the pros and cons of water birth, I feel like they were trying so hard to be balanced that the cons were a real reach. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think they overinflated some of the risks of water birth. So I'm not a fan of that particular topic on that website. I feel like it's actually not very balanced.
Their posts on evidence-based births and posts on like due dates and all that are really good, aren't they? Because they really break down like the statistics and
big baby,
all the different research that you can. No, they are really good.
No, they're really, really good. And they also have podcast episodes as well. So depending on what your preference is of how you digest information. I'm a visual, I need to read things. I know I produce a podcast. I don't listen to podcasts, okay? This really
do you not? I'm a podcast. I'm definitely a podcaster, and then I find more blogs if people need and I think blogs are quicker and easier to digest as well, right? So if someone's in labour, they're not going to sit and listen to our podcast on meconium, but they will read a page of like really short fire information in a blog. So it depends on the situation you're in, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's actually a really, really good point as well, actually, because being in labour is the wrong time to be doing your research.
Yes.
Okay? And if anybody's pregnant and they're listening to this and you have weeks or days or months until you are due, go and do your research beforehand, because you should not be researching stuff in the middle of labour in the birth room. Your brain is not in the right place to be thinking critically. And to be using that conscious part of your brain. You should be switching that off. And you don't want your birth partner scrabbling around trying to find information either. They're supposed to be supporting you. So you really need to be doing this prep early. Do it early. Don't wait in the middle of labour.
It's really sad because the sad part of this conversation is you should be able to not even ask the right questions, but this information should be given to you. And it shouldn't be on you to find it. And that's really frustrating. I find that very frustrating. But if we take a step back again in labour, you shouldn't be having to scrabble for information. If there is a decision to be made, you can generally ask the right questions and get the information from the people in the room with you, but you do need the right questions
Yeah.
to ask,
Mhm.
which is where like the hypnobirthing, the benefits risks brain acronym, all of those things again are really important parts of that research in pregnancy, so that even if you've not done that particular bit of research, you can ask the right questions to get that information.
Mhm.
And knowing that someone saying, oh, it's because your risk doubles isn't good enough. Like, you need to know from what to what.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because those, those scary statistics of your risk has tripled, your risk has doubled, like that's scary. That's like, is it gone from 50% to 100% now? That's terrifying. But it might be 0.1 to 0.2, in which case that's not as scary.
Yeah.
So it's just understanding that to interrogate the information you're given, and that's where like we come in, right? Like people my clients go to appointments and get given all these scary things and come out and talk to me about it, or they've told me that my risk's doubled now, and I'm like, okay, but let's look at the actual figures, and then they feel better.
Yeah.
And it's it's understanding how you can ask those questions to get that information, and then having someone to go talk to about it if you need a little bit more help with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the relative risk versus absolute risk point is something that I raise with my clients all the time, because I feel like either intentionally or unintentionally, relative risk is just bandied about,
Yeah.
because it reinforces the narrative that you should be doing what they're telling you to do, because it
Mm,
plays on your fears. I've had clients who've been told that your risk triples, but it was a 1 in 3,000 to a 6 in 3,000 risk, which 6 in 3,000, again, they love this per thousand risk. 6 in 3,000 and 0.2% chance of something happening. So yeah, okay,
yeah.
it's increased sixfold, absolutely. But you still have a 99.8% chance of it not happening. The way that information, particularly when we're coming to like research studies and justification of medical interventions, how that information is being relayed to you is really, really important. And you're right, knowing how to ask the questions to really dig into that and interrogate that information is a skill, to be honest. And again, not
It
something
is.
that you should be having to do in the middle of labour.
No, and the thing is as well that, you don't need, I'm not saying everyone needs all this information to give birth.
Mhm.
You can give birth,
Yes.
like your body will give birth. For the majority of people, it will happen. It might happen fast, it might happen slow. You might be 3 in 10, you might be 2 in 10, who knows? Like contraction pattern, but it will happen. But if you're using the NHS, then you need this information. And that's the sad reality that we're in.
Yeah. Yeah, because unfortunately, if you're birthing in a hospital setting or within the medical system, they will use whatever guidelines and policies and research, I'm doing air quotes here for the podcast, to back up those medical interventions. And we know that that can cause a cascade of further medical interventions. So you're right, our bodies know what they're doing. It's everything outside of our bodies that is enforced on us when we are giving birth that derails that. So, and that's why you need to do research. That's why you need to understand how to minimize the chances of that cascade happening, which is going to increase if you're being offered things which are, again, air quote, evidence based, when actually it's failure to wait. It's proactively managing things that actually maybe don't need intervention quite just yet, and being able to assess that risk yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. So, where can people find you if they would like to book you for virtual support?
So I have my Instagram. That's my main area where I hang out. I do also have a website which has loads more information about like the details of my packages and how I can support people. Like everybody though, like we're so flexible. So if you look at our websites and think like, actually, I would want to do that, but I don't want the rest of it, and I'd like to add that on. Like, we make things, like, we're happy to support people. I do this because I want to help people. So there's lots of ways to work with me, and you just need to message me and we'll figure it out.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been really fantastic talking to you, and I've been trying to
You
plan this
too.
for ages, so I'm glad we
Yeah,
finally got round to it. And I'll make sure I've tagged you in the show notes so that if anybody does want to find you, they can do.
brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks.